Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So earlier today, Katie over at Books and Things did a fantastic video where she talked through her top 15 favourite musicals of all time. Despite the fact that this is not the regular content on either me or Katie's channels. Maybe you get a little bit more theatre because one of my other hobbies is musical theatre, but we don't talk about it typically on our channels. And when I saw Katie's video, I was so delighted, but also so baffled with myself that I have never actually sat down and made this video. So thank you very much, Katie, for the inspiration here. Basically, Katie Lumsden did a video about her favourite musicals, so now I'm doing my video about my favourite musicals, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. It was really interesting going through Katie's list, getting a bit more of an insight into her taste in musicals. We have a lot of overlap, but then there are quite a few different ones on my list as well. I don't get a chance to go to London quite as frequently as I would like to, so actually not all of the musicals on this list are based on stage productions that I've seen. Some of them are actually based on films, because when I tried to put together a list of 15, it just didn't quite look right to me. There were a lot of musicals that I was leaving out because either I prefer their film version or I haven't seen their stage version, and the list as it was just didn't feel very reflective of me, and it didn't feel right to talk about favourite musicals while leaving out some of these great film musicals that I love. So I hope it's okay. I have slightly broken the rules because, as I say, not all of these are stage, and I will flag when that is the case. I also have not yet put this into an order, so I'm going to have to do that on the fly. But without much further ado, let's just get into my gushing about some of my favourite musicals. So number 15, I ummed and ahed about putting this one on the list, and the main reason for it is that I have history with this musical. It is a musical that I have loved since I was 5-6 years old and I first saw one of the film versions of it for the first time. And the reason that I have slightly complicated feelings about it is because I was in a production of it at the beginning of this year. This time last year was actually when we started the rehearsal process and did all the auditions for it, and I went for the lead because it was a dream role of mine since I was very small, and I didn't get it, and I'm just gonna say it led me on a bit of a downward spiral for a good 3 months. I was not a happy person. But that is just the nature of doing theatre, is that sometimes you go up for roles that you really love and then you don't get them, and it's gutting. And I can't say that I'm 100% over it, because in fact since we did this show I haven't actually listened to it since because I still find it quite raw. But then when I was trying to think of another show that I could include, I just couldn't do it. I was looking over like some of my old repertoire trying to get inspiration, and I just came across so many songs from this musical that I've brought to singing lessons, that I've performed in front of other people, that I just love so much that it didn't feel right for me not to include this musical. Just because I'm feeling some kind of way about it right now does not mean that its impact on my life is any less. I'm going to stop myself from being dramatic and just say what the musical is. It is Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. I grew up watching the Brandy and Whitney Houston film of this musical, and I just thought it was so delightful and so magical. Like, the film itself is kind of like quite cheaply produced. A lot of the sets do just look like sets, but there is a brilliant cast attached to this. This, as the title suggests, is a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, so it's a legit musical traditionally, but the version that I originally watched with Brandy and Whitney Houston infuses a lot more of a more popish R&B feel to it. But I think it really works, and like I say, I grew up watching this musical and I loved it. I then went on to follow all of the news about the 2013 Broadway production. It had more of that traditional kind of Rodgers and Hammerstein Disney kind of sound, and I fell in love with those versions of these songs. And there are just some beautiful songs in this musical. In My Own Little Corner, which is a Cinderella solo, is one of my go-to solo songs. 10 Minutes Ago was actually the song that I auditioned for my current musical theatre society to become a member. Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful, or Are You Beautiful Because I Love You is one of, it's just a gorgeous love song. And then The Loneliness of Evening, which is not in the film but it is in the Broadway production, is just such a gorgeous somber song for the prince. The one reason I would put this slightly lower, aside from the fact that I haven't listened to it in so long, is that I will say the 2013 Broadway script for this show is not great. It is very dated, it sounds very 2013, and it sounds very stilted and awkward. I do think if anyone was going to produce this musical now, they'd need to give a bit of an overhaul of the script. Just tighten it up, make it sound a little less clunky. But the music is just stunning. It is just Rodgers and Hammerstein on top form. So it definitely had to have a space on this list. Another musical that I've done with my musical theatre society, and really this is where I fell in love with the show, was by performing it, is Lerner and Loewe's My Fair Lady. Now, this is a musical that I had some knowledge of. I definitely had seen the film when I was very young. I definitely remember watching it with my nana, but really the lasting memories that I had of that film were just random lines here and there, like The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Or Audrey Hepburn at the Ascot racecourse yelling, "Come on Dover, move your blooming arse!" And I did sing I Could Have Danced All Night for my grade 5 music exam. But it wasn't until doing a production of My Fair Lady that I actually got to learn what the plot is about. And I got to put all of these songs in context. And it's just gorgeous. I kind of presumed that you would know the plot of Cinderella, so I didn't really give a synopsis, but My Fair Lady is an adaptation of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, about a young Cockney flower girl who ends up going to a linguistics professor, Henry Higgins, asking him if he will give her elocution lessons because she wants to get a job in a flower shop and she knows that her accent is going to hinder her ability to actually rise up in the world. Higgins, who is pompous and arrogant, is a bit reluctant, but a bet is struck between him and his associate Colonel Pickering as to whether or not Higgins will be able to transform Eliza into a respected lady of society. Will he be able to train her so well that she can trick everybody? Once again, like Rodgers and Hammerstein, there's some beautiful, just soaring, sweeping songs in My Fair Lady, but also some really funny ones as well. Why Can't the English is just such a funny character song for Bertha Higgins. Wouldn't It Be Lovely is obviously a classic. But I think my favourite song in My Fair Lady is one that I didn't expect to be a favourite, and it's On the Street Where You Live, which is sung by Freddie Eynsford Hill, who is one of the refined upper-class gentlemen who ends up falling for Eliza. And I had heard people sing this song before and I kind of hated it. I thought it was so saccharine sweet. I thought it was so ridiculous, but then actually hearing it in the context of the show, like Freddie himself is very sincere, but there is a lot of like gentle poking fun at him for how ridiculous he is being, declaring his love for Eliza despite only knowing her for about 5 minutes. But once again, it's the power of Lerner and Loewe and the orchestrations, and it's just a beautiful soaring melody. And yeah, I just fell in love with this show and I would love to do it again, if only to be able to do a full run of this show that isn't hindered by people having to go off sick because of COVID. We did it in December 2021 and interesting results. There was not a single day where we had the full cast present. People had to chop and change parts and what they were doing every single day because somebody ended up having to go off sick. It was quite a stressful time, but I don't think I have ever felt so bonded to a cast as I did following this show. Just truly had a great time. Next musical on my list is Hadestown, written by Anaïs Mitchell. This is a stylised depiction of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, but also tells a little bit of the story of Persephone and Hades, but stylised in the sense that people are wearing more industrialised modern clothing, and the music is very much inspired by like jazzy 1930s New Orleans. And if you ever get a chance to see this, you absolutely should. It's such an unexpected combination of musical styles and story, but it works so very well. It's a musical that is about why it is that we continue to tell tragic tales despite knowing how it's going to end, and that little bit of hope that we always hold on to that the story might end up differently. Some of my favourite songs for me include, of course, Wait For Me, If It's True, which is just so tragic and heartbreaking, Anyway the Wind Blows, When the Chips Are Down. I have to give a shout out to the staging of this show, particularly how it depicts going down into the underworld. I don't even know how well I can explain this. It's just a show that I think you have to see to really understand the power of it. Next up, we're going to talk about a musical that in times gone by probably would have been a little bit higher on this list. It's just that I haven't gone to see it for a while. I haven't listened to it for a while, and so other things have kind of overtaken it. It's also not a very traditional musical, so probably that has meant that other ones pip it to the post a little bit, but it is Six the Musical, which, as I say, is a non-traditional musical in the sense that, yes, there are songs, yes, people are performing on stage, but it does take place more like a concert than a musical with set and different costumes and different scenes. In this, you have the 6 wives of Henry VIII recounting their lives and competing with each other to work out which queen had the hardest lot by Henry. You've got a real fun mix of pop meets Tudor aesthetic, and each different queen has a different artist which their song is inspired by. Catherine of Aragon being more inspired by Beyonce, Anne Boleyn by Lily Allen, Jane Seymour by Adele, Anna of Clever by Nicki Minaj or Rihanna, Catherine Howard more of a mix of Ariana Grande and Britney Spears, and Catherine Parr, Alicia Keys, with the queens bickering and competing with each other to finally realise that maybe it's not Henry that makes them special, but actually the other way around. Maybe the reason that so many people remember Henry VIII is actually because of his 6 wives. And it is such a fun, feel-good musical. In terms of its historical accuracy, there are definitely like little nitpicks that I can have for it, particularly with the character of Anne Boleyn. Her song is absolutely fantastic, but also not the most accurate thing in the world. But as I say, it's so much fun that I just kind of ignore it in my brain. But it has been a while since I've seen it, so I feel like my attachment has slightly weakened. But for the effect it's had on my life, it was one of the musicals that I actually based my master's dissertation upon, the other 2 which are coming up in a moment. I have a 6 hat that I bought from the original production at the other palace, and I've been wearing it ever since. So it's definitely had a lasting legacy on my life. Next up, for a musical that I love particularly because of its film, we have another classic Rodgers and Hammerstein, and it is The Sound of Music. music. I specifically love the film for this. Like, I am currently in a production of the stage musical, and I'm very happy about it. The music is still great, but the movie is just leagues better than the stage musical. I think they just flesh out this story and they make smart choices in adapting it from stage to film that worked so incredibly well that I do have to give the edge to the movie. And also the fact that it's Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer. You know, this film is just so iconic to my childhood. The story of this free-spirited postulant Maria who is sent away to be governess for 7 children of a retired naval captain who is very much still grieving his wife but keeping all of that emotion under wraps. His grief has come out in this very strict disciplinarian military life that he set up for his children, and it takes Maria, who is more headstrong and more creative, to get this family out of its rut and to make them see the power and the love and the joy of music. This film also means a lot to me because it is my dad's favourite film of all time. My dad's very funny because generally when it comes to films he is very much into his action movies, and yet this is his favourite film, and yet between Christmas and New Year, every single year, he will be watching this. And of course, I'll be watching alongside. I actually think my favourite song in The Sound of Music is one that is not going to be in our production because it often is not allowed for amateur productions to put this song in, and it is I Have Confidence. It's another go-to solo for me that I always love to sing, and unfortunately we don't get to do it in our show. I actually have a video from a few years ago of me singing I Have Confidence, so I'll link that down below. But yeah, I'll keep that song in my heart even if we can't have it in our show. Next up is a show that I actually went to see recently, but a concert production, and it is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, with music by Alain Menken and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz. I grew up with the Disney movie, I absolutely love it, but I am specifically talking about the stage version, which has a few more songs and it has a slightly darker version of the story, much more based around the book by Victor Hugo than the Disney film, in that it has a very tragic ending. And I love this musical. It's another one where I do feel like the book of the musical, the script, could do with a little extra pass. I don't think a lot of the dialogue is the strongest in the world, but the music, oh my god. I went to see a concert production of this a couple of weeks back and it was just mesmerising. And it's a show that won't be produced very often because it requires like a full choir in order to get this beautiful sound across. This, of course, retelling Victor Hugo's novel, following the character of Quasimodo, our eponymous Hunchback of Notre Dame, who has been raised by the cruel Frollo. Quasimodo is actually Frollo's nephew, and because of how he looks, he is kept hidden away in the bell tower, but he yearns for freedom. Among all of this, we see Frollo's persecution of the Romany people in Paris. Quasimodo meets one of the Romany women, Esmeralda, who shows him kindness for the first time and makes him start to realise that maybe he is not the monster that Frollo has been telling him he is. My favourite song in this musical is Out There, which is Quasimodo's solo. It is such a stunning, hopeful, joyous song that just made the hairs on the back of my neck just raise when I heard it live. But also, of course, Hellfire, which is one of the best Disney villain songs of all time. And I also love an addition to this musical called Made of Stone, which is when Quasimodo is at his emotional lowest. Next up is Guys and Dolls. This is a musical that I had never seen before, never listened to before, until it came to the Bridge Theatre in London and I saw their immersive Guys and Dolls experience. And after seeing that production, I just fell in love. This is a story following 2 different romantic pairings, but all centred around New York circa sometime between 1920 and 1940, depends on when the production decides to set it, and New York's gambling scene of the time. We're following 2 different romantic pairings. We have Nathan Detroit, who is the lead orchestrator of a crap game, despite the fact that he has told his fiancée, his longtime fiancée, Miss Adelaide, that he is not going to do gambling anymore. He's scrambling around trying to find $1,000 to be able to host the next game when he runs into Sky Masterson, who is another notorious gambler who is known for taking quite outlandish bets. And he bets Sky that he would not be able to take a woman of Nathan's choice to Havana in Cuba by the next day. Sky is very cocky and arrogant and assures Nathan that he would be able to. And Nathan decides to pick the most unlikely candidate, Sergeant Sarah Brown, who is a missionary dedicated to driving sin out of New York City and particularly among its gambling population. All the while, Miss Adelaide, who is Nathan's fiancée, is increasingly depressed about the fact that Nathan just seems to be putting off marrying her. This was just unexpectedly such a fun show, and I definitely recommend going to see a production of this if you can, rather than watching the film. The film is a little bit naff, I'm not gonna lie, and it's just such a shame that the Bridge Theatre production closed because it was so much fun, just so high energy. It was performed really well. It just made the show feel so relevant and modern despite not really changing too much about it. Also, watching Cedric Neal perform Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat was just such a transcendent musical theatre moment for me. Just listening to that 2023 cast recording cannot quite convey how beautiful that was. If I Were a Bell has now gone into my rotation of favourite songs to sing, but other favourites include the very popular Look Be a Lady, I've Never Been in Love Before, Sit Down You're Rocking the Boat of course, and also I really enjoy, and I'm going to move away from the 2023 for a moment, Nathan Lane and Faith Price singing Sue Me is just one of my favourite musical theatre moments that I have ever watched. If I could time travel just for a moment, it would be to go back and see their performance. Also, editing Charlotte here for a fun little fact. Did you know that Nathan Lane's actual birth name is not Nathan, but his stage name is Nathan because he named himself after Nathan Detroit from Guys and Dolls and then went on to play him on Broadway? Like, mad! Next up is Wicked. This is the musical that got me into musical theatre. Now, I grew up watching musical movies like Oliver and Annie and The Sound of Music, but Wicked is what got me good and proper into theatre, into wanting to sing and perform on stage. And so I will always be very, very grateful for it. And now I'm so happy that the movie has come out, the first part of the movie, so that so many more people can see what a great show this is. As Katie says, it is kind of cheesy, but I think the cheese is what makes it work. This is a retelling, a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, adapted from the book by Gregory Maguire, and it is a more sympathetic portrayal of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and how she may not have been wicked but rather misunderstood. It constructs a backstory for her, the first act taking place predominantly at university, where she meets Glinda, formerly Gartlinda, who would go on to be the Good Witch of the North, and they have a little bit of an enemies to friends dynamic. There are so many fun little nuggets sprinkled through the story, references to the original Wizard of Oz, that really turn this story on its head. Now, as a soprano, I am a Glinda girl at heart, and if I were going to play anybody in the show, it would be Glinda. But my favourite song in this musical is No Good Deed, which I am so excited to see performed by Cynthia Erivo in part 2. But I also have such a soft spot for Thank Goodness, which is another part 2 song sung by Glinda. Defying Gravity is obviously an iconic Act 1 ending highlight. And actually, a song that I was never super fussed on in the stage musical, and actually the movie has made me really appreciate, is Dancing Through Life. Something about Jonathan Bailey dancing around singing this song just really did it for me. Now we're going on to another musical that I predominantly love through its film, and actually I kind of can't stand the stage version of this, and it is The Prince of Egypt, the DreamWorks movie with songs by Stephen Schwartz. And I should have said that Wicked was also a Stephen Schwartz venture. This is an animated retelling of the life of Moses. I say stunning a lot in this video, but it is one of the most underrated animated films. Actually, no, I would just say just one of the most underrated films of all time. I feel like I don't hear enough people talking about how brilliant this film is. Obviously, it is a film that has a religious story, and I think that puts a lot of people off it. But I feel like even if that isn't something that you typically gravitate towards, the film itself is just so well made. The music is just so emotional and powerful. The animation, particularly the CGI animation for 1997, is still so spectacular now, so many years later. And I don't know if I can do justice trying to name favourite songs in this. I mean, my favourite song of all time from this musical is The Plagues, which is one of the reasons that I don't like the musical so much, is that they completely chop up the Plague song in the stage musical. I will be forever mad about that. It is one of the biggest injustices to musical theatre that I have ever seen. But also Through Heaven's Eyes is a favourite. Any chance to listen to Brian Stokes Mitchell, I will take. Deliverers is just one of the most powerful, visceral starts to an animated musical that I have ever seen. I know everybody says that The Circle of Life is the best animated opener, but I firmly disagree. Deliverers all the way. Next up, we're going to do a musical that was actually Katie's top choice, and it is Come From Away, written by David Hein and Irene Sankoff. This is a beautiful, beautiful story based on real life events following 9/11. US airspace has been closed, and so there are suddenly so many flights around the world that are having to be diverted. One of the places that these planes end up diverted to is Gander in Newfoundland, which had often been used as a refueling stop. This small town of around about 7,000-8,000 people suddenly had 38 planes landing on it and thousands of passengers who needed shelter, food and board. It's a musical that is about the kindness that these residents showed, but it's also not shying away from the anxiety and the tension, the distrust and the fear that people felt following 9/11. One of the most emotional moments of this musical for me is when, at the beginning of the musical, the residents of Gander are asking why it is that these planes are being diverted towards them, and the mayor just sadly says, if anything goes wrong, there are far fewer people here to be lost than if they were to be sent elsewhere. But it is just a show about kindness, about people doing good, about people triumphing in the face of adversity, and the real connections that people made. This musical is basically a patchwork quilt of all of these different oral interviews that the show creators did on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, the commemorations that were happening in Gander. It's one of the musicals that I actually used in my dissertation, and basically my argument was this was their oral history, but instead of putting it in a paper or in a book, they put it in a musical. and I think it works so incredibly well. The only reason it ranks a little bit lower for me is that it's not a musical that I find myself listening to a whole lot, but the actual experience of watching it, I highly recommend. It is one of the most powerful pieces of musical theatre that I have ever seen. It's just not one that I'm like, oh, there are so many tracks that I want to listen to from this. It's very much a musical that in its context I love, but it definitely has to be in the context for me to want to listen to it. Okay, I do love this film very, very much, but because I want my top choices to be purely stage musicals that I love, I'm going to put it further down than I probably would like to. But it is Disney's Beauty and the Beast, with lyrics by Howard Ashman and music by Alan Menken. This is my favourite Disney film of all time. It means an awful lot to me, and I just think every single song in this musical, oh, it's so beautiful. I've also seen the stage production of this a couple of times, and I did really, really enjoy it. I just wish it was on more often. I wish it toured more. I wish it was in the West End more. I just would like to see different productions of this, and I would also very much like to be in a production of this. Hello, Belle. Of course, there are so many amazing songs from Beauty and the Beast, but one that I really wanted to give a shout out to that is in the stage musical is If I Can't Love Her. This is the Beast solo. It's actually the closing to Act 1, and it's just beautiful. I need to find different adjectives, but it's so great and resonant and powerful and emotional, and yeah, you just feel the frustration and the shame that the Beast feels in himself. This little bit of hope that Belle's arrival at the castle has given to him, but just his self-hatred is so strong. Oh, gorgeous film, and I wish it was produced more. Okay, we're now into the top 4, and we are just focusing on stage musicals from here on out. Okay, so this musical has always been in my top 3. It has recently shifted just because I find myself more often listening to number 3 on this list than this one, but it is Sweeney Todd. This has music by Stephen Sondheim and is, of course, the infamous story of the demon barber of Fleet Street. Benjamin Barker, who 15 years ago was transported for a crime that he did not commit by the villainous Judge Turpin, who was in lust with Benjamin's wife Lucy, has now returned to London and is seeking his revenge. When he comes back to his old shop on Fleet Street, he sees that it has been taken over as a failing pie shop by the rather amoral Mrs. Lovett, but they become a partnership, and between Sweeney's desire to murder and Mrs. Lovett's desire to have a pie shop that is functioning and selling well, rather carnivorous results occur. This is the very first stage musical that I was ever a part of. When I was 17, 18, I was in a production of this, and I'm not going to lie to you, for this being my very first show, bit of a trial by fire. This is the only Sondheim that is on this list, which is quite surprising because I do love Sondheim. I just haven't seen a whole lot of Sondheim live in person, and I think as time goes by I will probably add more and more Sondheim to this list. But Sweeney Todd just means so, so much to me. I have great memories of performing this, and it's a show that I definitely would like to do again as an ensemble piece. My goodness, is it difficult. Lots of vocal jumps, lots of melodies that go in directions that you don't think are possible for your voice to do. But when you master them, it feels so great. I just generally love a musical that is very music heavy and very tragic and somber in tone, where everybody dies at the end. That's just one of my loves. And Sweeney Todd definitely fits the bill for this. It's the grisliest musical on my list, but it's such good fun. And I think one of the things that the stage musical does well and the film doesn't quite get across is how darkly funny the musical is. My first exposure to this musical was through the Johnny Depp Helena Bonham Carter film, directed by Tim Burton. And yeah, what I would say about the stage musical is that it's funny and the movie isn't really funny. So if you ever get a chance to experience the stage musical, I definitely recommend it. Some of my favourite songs in this include My Friends. As a soprano, you can guess that I've sung a lot of Greenfinch and Linnet Bird in my life, but I think my favourite song is the Joanna Quartet. It is so beautiful and haunting, particularly as Sweeney starts to give up on the notion that he will ever get to see his daughter again. So good, so good. Musical number 3 has crept up over time, and it is The Phantom of the Opera, with music by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Of course, I have based my life around wanting to hit the notes that Christine hits in this musical. I love it so much. The best time to experience Phantom of the Opera for the first time is definitely if you are a moody teenage girl. If you're a teenage girl who loves musicals and you already have a lot of feelings, then Phantom is definitely for you. It will tick a lot of boxes for you, and that's definitely who I was when I first discovered Phantom. Phantom of the Opera, adapted from the Gaston Leroux novel, in which we are following the young ingenue soprano Christine Daae, who, following the abrupt exit of prima donna Carlotta, ends up being co-opted to be the lead in their show. And we discover that she's secretly been taking lessons from an angel of music, who turns out to be the Phantom of the Opera, the opera ghost, who is in fact a real man, who has been extorting the Paris Opera House for money, living living down in the basement of the opera house. He is a genius musician, architect, inventor, and he is madly in love with Christine Daae and will stop at nothing to see her succeed, even if that involves murder. It's so much fun, it has so much melodrama. Oh, I just love it so much. We recently had our auditions for The Sound of Music, and I was feeling kind of sad, about the fact that I didn't get a call back for Maria. And so when I had my singing lesson later that day, I just brought Phantom to my music teacher and I was like, please, can we just sing Think of Me? That'll really cheer me up. And he wonderfully obliged. I recommend not going through the movie if you're going to experience this for the first time. I definitely recommend the 25th anniversary concert at the Royal Albert Hall, starring Ramin Karimloo, Sierra Boggess and Hadley Fraser. It is just the superlative version of this musical in my mind. Favourite songs from this include Think of Me, Point of No Return, the final lair, actually the last song in this musical might actually be my favourite. It's so dramatic and tragic and I love it. Musical number 2 on this list I know is a favourite of a lot of people, and me too. It is Hamilton. A bit of a departure from most of the music on this list since it is so inspired by hip hop and rap, but this is Lin-Manuel Miranda's retelling of the life of Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the United States, the very first Secretary of the Treasury, and retells his life as this scrappy underdog who goes on to have such a profound impact on the history of America, despite the fact that he died young in a duel. This was a musical that the first time that I came across it, I was like, really? Because, you know, as you can tell from the rest of the music on this list, I'm not really much of a hip hop rap person. I kind of had my doubts, but the more that I listened to it, the more I really got on board. And it has become one of my favourite musicals of all time. And it's just so much fun. There's so much energy. I love the wordplay in this musical, but also for all of the wit in the lyrics, for all of the smart little jokes and influences and little Easter eggs that Lin-Manuel Miranda peppers throughout this story. There's also a lot of heart to this musical. Definitely recommend watching the Disney Plus production, but also if you ever get a chance to see it live, I definitely recommend. Favourite songs from this, probably Wait For It, One Last Time, History Has Its Eyes on You. I actually love the finale, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story. I love that Hamilton's wife Eliza gets to have her due at the end. And then finally, my number 1 favourite musical of all time. If you know me, you could probably guess what this was just from my BookTube channel alone. But of course, it had to be Les Miserables, with music by Claude-Michel Schönberg and lyrics by Alain Boublil. This is a French musical that was then translated, adapted into English, and it is the longest running show in the West End, for good reason, because it is fantastic. I have done quite a few videos actually about the musical, which I'll link down below. One which is about which is my favourite version of Les Mis that I've ever heard, but also a video series which was about the book to musical changes. But of course the story of the ex-convict Jean Valjean who breaks his parole and sets out to make a better life for himself, to be an honest man, all the while he is being pursued by Inspector Javert, who wants to recapture him and take him back to prison. In the midst of all of this, we have the 1832 Paris Rebellion, a student uprising, which ultimately ends in tragedy, because it's me and I love a tragic musical. Les Mis is interesting because honestly, like, I can go months and months without listening to Les Mis, but the second that I either sit down in a theatre to watch it or I put the soundtrack in my ears, I feel like I'm at home. And that's how I know that this is my favourite musical of all time. It just never gets old for me. I just think it's beautiful. Just this story of redemption, of friendship, of love. It makes me really, really happy. And it's one of those musicals that when people say they don't like it, I just instantly get my hackles up because I don't understand how you could not love this musical. Favourites from this show include Valjean's soliloquy, I Dreamed a Dream, Stars. I also love Javert's soliloquy. I don't know if I can actually say the full title on a YouTube video, but I think that is my favourite song from this musical. On My Own, Drink With Me. So many great songs. But if you haven't given Les Mis a chance, I would say definitely watch my video about which version you should watch first. I have opinions and I very strongly feel like the film is not the way to go, but yeah, I will always endorse Les Mis with every fibre of my being. It is my favourite musical of all time and I don't see anything flipping it to the post anytime soon. So there we go, those are my 15 favourite musicals of all time, both stage and film. Thank you very much, Katie, for giving me the boost, the motivation to do this video. I can't believe it's taken me so long to make. Please let me know of your thoughts to any of the musicals I've spoken today down in the comments below, and let me know if any musicals that I left out that are your favourites. I would love to get any recommendations. I've definitely not seen every musical out there and I'd be keen to get some recommendations from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.